Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session in American English Live Series 21. We're so excited that each of you are here with us today. I am Dr. Darlene Wiggins Dockery, and I will be your host, along with my colleague behind the scenes, Doria, who will be our moderator, helping to answer your questions and responding to your comments during the session. We wanted to let you know that today's session will be recorded and shared across various platforms. By attending and adding your comments to the chat or comments during today's webinar, your name, your country, and or comment may be included in the video recording. By participating, you consent to your appearance in the recording and its use for purposes related to the work and business of FHI 360 or the U.S. Department of State. If you do not wish to appear in the recording, please do not share any comments in the chat or comment spots during the live webinar. So throughout Series 21, we will explore a variety of strategies for building academic skills for success and assessment in the English language classroom. We hope that you'll be able to use these practical strategies and ideas that we share. So here's what you can expect today. Our session is about 60 minutes long. The presenter will present the material, and I, your host, will be commenting and asking questions as well. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address your ideas and experiences. Please share your thoughts in the comments feature or the chat box. When our session comes to a close, you will have the opportunity to receive a digital badge for your participation. At the end of the webinar, we'll share a link in the comments. Click on that link and complete a short quiz about today's session. You must answer 2 out of 3 of the questions correctly. If you successfully pass the quiz on your first attempt, you can expect to get your badge via email in about a week. And before we get started, we wanted to tell you about our massive open online courses, or MOOC. Are you interested in learning more about climate change and other environmental issues in the context of the English language classroom and teaching? Enroll today in our free Teaching English for Environmental Awareness course to learn more and discover how to incorporate these topics in your teaching. The course is open now and enrollment closes on November 18th. You can use the link that is now being shared by the moderator to learn more and to enroll today. Now for today's webinar, Empowering Student Learning through the Commonplace book, a knowledge management strategy. This session introduces the Commonplace book, or personal learning journal, a transformative method to help students acquire and organize personally relevant knowledge. Discover how to turn annotation and note-taking into powerful learning tools for creating personal journals that serve as unique repositories of your students' ideas and thoughts. We will explore ways to engage your students in creating and sharing knowledge through special projects. Join us to explore this versatile strategy and leave with practical tools and inspiration to elevate your teaching and ignite students' passion for learning. And we are pleased to introduce our presenter, Jessamyn Embry. Jess is a senior technical officer for English language acquisition at FHI 360. For the U.S. Department of State's Online Professional English Network, or OPEN program, she collaborates with university partners to develop online courses. Most recently, she worked with Arizona State University to develop English for Media Literacy as a 21st century skill course. She holds a BA in International Studies from American University and an MA in TESOL from the School for International Training Graduate Institute. Prior to joining OPEN, Jess oversaw partnerships between American and Afghan universities for higher education program in Afghanistan. She has also directed English language programs at universities in India and California. Welcome, Jess.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Darlene, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for joining me for this discussion on using Commonplace books as learning journals in the English language classroom. In today's session, we'll begin with a brief look at the history of knowledge management and how the Commonplace book came to be. And then we'll take a closer look at how Commonplace books can be applied in a language learning context. We'll explore some of the theories supporting their use, how you can create your own Commonplace book, and some practical strategies for using them in a language learning environment. So before diving into the specifics of using Commonplace books, let's start by discussing the general concept of knowledge management in a language learning context. When I say knowledge management, I'm talking about the various ways that we collect, organize, and reflect on important information to facilitate learning. For example, mind maps, digital notebooks, binders, shared folders in the cloud, and learning management systems like Canvas, which we use here on Open. These are all examples of knowledge management systems. They're the tools that you use to categorize and store information. But the Commonplace book is just one approach to knowledge management. So before I go into details about this one way of doing things, I'd love to talk a little about other approaches to knowledge management. So Darlene, how about you? What approaches do you use to save and organize new information? Do you have a strategy that you like to use?
Well, I can tell you I used to love Post-it notes. The more colors, the better. And I used to have them all around my computer, but now I tend to use the Notes app on my phone most often to organize or capture thoughts in the moment.
Those are great approaches to knowledge management. I wonder if anyone in the audience has a knowledge management approach that they'd like to share. What systems do you use to help your learners manage knowledge in the classroom or in the learning environment?
Okay, so we want to hear from you. What strategies or tools do you use to help learners manage knowledge? And we've already heard from two of our audience members. We heard from Junaid, who said Padlet. And then we also heard from Olga, who said Google Docs. And we heard from Mohammed, who said books and notes help a lot. So those are some of the three responses that we have received from our participants. Back to you, Jess.
Those are excellent examples of knowledge management tools. So managing knowledge, seeking order from chaos has been a human endeavor since the very beginning. The history of humanity can be traced by looking at the ways that we have worked to hold on to precious knowledge before it disappears. One of my favorite examples of an ancient knowledge management system is the songline of Aboriginal Australia. Over 40,000 years ago, Aboriginal Australians composed songs to help them navigate across the Australian outback. These songs would tell the story of a hero traveling across the land, navigating by a map of the stars in the night sky and features in the landscape. People who knew these songs could travel for thousands of miles following the route through song. And today, 40,000 years later, if you look at a road map of the Australian outback, the roads will follow a pattern very similar to the routes that are described in these ancient songs. Knowledge that people tens of thousands of years ago thought was important enough to preserve remains a precious resource to this day. And these days, you might access that same information on a map on your smartphone rather than through a song. So the knowledge management tool has changed, but the precious knowledge, the core ideas that create the system, remain the same. The Commonplace book is another example of knowledge management. This approach uses a notebook rather than a song. It's a very simple concept. You collect quotes and ideas of your choosing and place them under a heading in the book. Over time, you build a personal reference book of ideas and things that are important and interesting to you. So it's a space where inspiration, wisdom, and knowledge converge, often organized by themes or big philosophical ideas like truth, kindness, justice, or freedom. These books can become a living document filled with quotes and reflections on these significant themes. Commonplace books first came into popularity in Europe during the Renaissance. They experienced a resurgence during the Enlightenment, and they're seeing another boom now. So what do these three time periods have in common? These are moments when society experienced surges in access to information. The Renaissance followed a dark 500-year period in Europe marked by low literacy rates and social, economic, and cultural stagnation. During this period, European knowledge of the classical Greek and Roman period faded into obscurity. However, this knowledge continued to be preserved and translated into Arabic in libraries like Baghdad's Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. Eventually, these classical works were translated from Arabic into Latin and made their way back into circulation. This wealth of information that has been preserved by scholars in libraries like the House of Wisdom contributed to the intellectual revival of Europe. As European scholars and thinkers like Leonardo da Vinci attempted to collect and manage this flood of information, they began to develop systems for their notebooks and journals, and the Commonplace book was born. Commonplace books saw another boom in popularity during the Enlightenment, as printing technologies rapidly evolved. Books and newspapers suddenly became accessible and available to an increasingly literate population. And people needed a new way to organize this new flood of information. And so they once again turned to the Commonplace book, refining it and creating categorization systems. Today, we're seeing another information revolution with new disruptive technologies like the internet, social media, and most recently, generative AI and large language models. These present us with more information than we know what to do with, and suddenly Commonplace books are back in fashion. So they're a time-tested tool. For centuries, scholars, writers, and thinkers like Frederick Douglass, Henry David Thoreau, Virginia Woolf, and Octavia Butler have used Commonplace books to capture quotes, record insights, organize thoughts, and process information from various sources. So how does this relate to language learning? Anyone who has tried to learn a new language will tell you that it takes more than just memorizing vocabulary or mastering grammar rules to succeed. It requires a deep engagement with one's sense of self. In early childhood, there's a moment when we first recognize ourselves in the mirror. In that moment that we recognize ourselves, we also have a reckoning between the self that lives internally and this human that we see in the mirror. We see the way that others see us and how we're represented in the world. And we begin to understand how others might perceive us, creating a tension between our internal lived experience and an external expectation. In many ways, learning to live and work in a language other than your mother tongue mirrors this experience. You have to learn to navigate a new linguistic and cultural world. You expose yourself to previously unknown expectations and discover new opportunities to explore how to speak, act, and present yourself to the world. Language learning forces you to do the hard work of defining yourself within a new world, to reconcile the nuances of a new, unfamiliar environment with your existing sense of self. Beyond this internal struggle, language learners also face an additional challenge of processing an overwhelming amount of information. Working in a language other than your mother tongue demands mental agility and flexibility. It requires the ability to connect new words and ways of being with existing mental concepts, deciding what's important and making it meaningful in a language and culture that may initially feel foreign. In language learning, a commonplace book can be adapted to create a space for personalized reflection on learning, a space to process thoughts before performing tasks like writing an essay or taking an exam. In this way, a commonplace book serves as both a personal tool for reflection and a bridge between acquiring knowledge and applying it in meaningful ways. It's like an external hard drive, or in today's terms, cloud storage for your brain, where you can browse, shuffle, and manipulate ideas before producing a final product that reflects your deepest understanding of the subject. At its core, a commonplace book is a collection of quotes and ideas that resonate with the learner. But what do I mean by resonate? Imagine that you're in a vast cave and you call out, "Hello," and your voice echoes back, "Hello," lingering and staying with you. When language resonates with you, it also stays with you, echoing in your thoughts and emotions. Whether it's a famous quote, a line from a poem, or something that you remember your grandmother saying, a commonplace book allows you to capture those special personal moments of resonance, the things that you find personally important. My grandmother, who was an English teacher, always kept a little quote on her desk that I now keep on mine. It reads, "To teach is to change a life forever." This quote, like those found in a commonplace book, inspired her, just as it inspires me now. Another quote that I love is from Malala Yousafzai. "Let us remember, one book, one pen, one child, and one teacher can change the world." So I wonder, before I go on, I wonder if I'm the only one who has favorite quotes about teaching or just favorite quotes in general. Darlene, do you have a favorite quote?
I have lots of favorite quotes, but it seems right now I can't think of one specifically about teaching or education, but I do enjoy collecting quotes. Let's
That's
see if
okay.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that that's okay. It's not always easy to remember a quote, which is why a commonplace book can be helpful. It helps you
Yeah.
remember the quotes. How about from the audience?
Well, let's see. I'm looking forward to seeing some good ones. Okay, Hareem has given us one. He said, "Knowledge is wisdom." And while
That's a
we
great one.
wait for others to come in, I wanted to share this comment with you from Diego, who said, "The song of the Aboriginals reminded me of the songs the Vikings used to pass stories from their achievements." And then now we've got a comment from Lourdes on a quote, and it's "Practice makes perfect." We also heard from Laiba, who said, "Try to have a character like salt, whose presence is not felt, but its absence makes all the things tasteless." And then I've not heard that one before. I like that one too.
Good. Yeah.
And then Miriam said, "Learning is an ongoing process. And as a teacher, you learn more." I like that one. That one's close to the one that's one of my favorites. It's a Latin version of that same idea that as teachers, we're the best, we are learners. So back to you, Jess. I'm sure we could go all day on these wonderful, wonderful quotes.
I love a good quote. These are great. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. And if you didn't share one, but you think of one as the session goes on, please share it in the chat. And if you see one that you like, jot it down on a scrap of paper, and it could be the first entry in your new commonplace book. So if you find that you gravitate toward quotes about the transformative power of education, this could reveal something deeper about you. that you have a calling to nurture growth and learning in others. And knowing that about yourself can help guide you in the choices you make in your life, both professionally and personally. A commonplace book is distinct from a traditional student notebook or diary. A traditional student notebook might contain lesson notes, vocabulary lists, and grammar exercises. In this way, it might more closely resemble a record of the teacher's thought process, or even the textbook author's thought process, rather than the learner's. Meanwhile, a diary might chronicle daily events and personal feelings, but a commonplace book is neither of these. In a way, it's most similar to a field journal. Researchers use field journals to document observations, to capture data in the moment as accurately as possible for later analysis and reporting. Like a field journal, a commonplace book is a working document that grows over time. It focuses on capturing meaningful content from external sources, a passage from a book, a line from a poem, and it mixes them with insightful thoughts that cross the learner's mind. It acts as a personal record of materials that the learner finds personally relevant and useful. Now, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with traditional notebooks or diaries. Both can be very useful tools for language learning. A commonplace book is just a slightly different tool. It's a workshop where the thinking gets done, bridging that personal internal world of the learner with the external world of the teacher's materials and the performance space. Commonplace books promote synthesis by design. And what I mean by that is commonplace books help you combine different ideas and information from multiple sources to create a new cohesive understanding. They offer a way to connect ideas and reflect on the bigger picture of one's personal language learning journey. Over time, they grow into this personalized resource of vocabulary and phrases, a mosaic of insights, really, that can be revisited and drawn upon whenever needed. So based on this overview of commonplace books, I wonder what potential benefits or strengths you in the audience see with the commonplace book.
Okay, so we hope you're already starting to make connections with this content. What might be some benefits or strengths of commonplace books? So let's see what you're already starting to connect to the work that you do. We are, let's see. Well, we're waiting for some comments to come in, and I see some have already come in. One from Olga said they might motivate us to learn more. And so that is one benefit of the commonplace book. Again, if you think of more, sometimes, as teachers, we have to give thinking time. So if you think of more, please put it in the chat. Back to you, Jess.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I will help you out here. There's a lot of benefits to using commonplace books. First, they align with constructivism, the theory that learning occurs when we actively participate in the learning process through a cycle of experimentation and reflection. Commonplace books offer a personal space in which to process the learning cycle. Personalized learning theory is the idea that individuals learn in unique ways and that a one-size-fits-all approach does not work for everyone. To be effective, learning needs to be meaningful to the individual learner. And a commonplace book allows learners to tailor material according to their interests and needs, reflecting on materials that resonate with them and understanding why they are important. Commonplace books also develop metacognitive processes and skills. Learning happens when you monitor your thoughts, your emotions, and strategies as you engage with new material. Keeping a commonplace book provides learners with a space to externalize their thoughts and reflect on why those thoughts are significant, promoting self-regulation and strategic planning skills. The commonplace book is also a form of personal expression. It's a space that encourages translanguaging, fluidly moving between languages to express ideas and deepen understanding. It allows students to mix quotes, stories, poems, and song lyrics from their home language and culture with the language and culture that they're studying. In doing so, commonplace books not only support language acquisition, but they also honor and preserve the user's cultural identity and their sense of self. This can make the overwhelming process of learning a new language more manageable and meaningful. In essence, the unique way that a commonplace book grows can help students identify where and how the language and culture that they're learning intersect with established aspects of their identity. It can become more than just a collection of ideas. It's a personalized guide that helps students discover and affirm their purpose. And as educators, our role is to guide them through that journey, not just in learning a language, but in finding what resonates with them deeply. Finally, a commonplace book is a form of reflective journaling. Students who regularly engage in reflective practices tend to perform better on assessments and have a more positive attitude to learning. So how can we help learners capture these moments of inspiration? You can encourage your students to keep a separate notebook, which they organize as they see fit, and which they can fill with knowledge and materials that are personally relevant to them. By offering them a space of their own, you can help them connect emotionally with language and keep their motivation high. You can invite students to take a moment to choose quotes or ideas from the course material that they personally want to remember. Ask students to reflect on why a particular quote or passage resonates with them. To get them into the habit of collecting and thinking about quotes, you could start each class with a quote of the day related to the lesson's theme and invite students to discuss its meaning and relevance. If they choose to, if that quote resonates with them, they can add it to their commonplace books. As time goes on and they begin to fill their notebooks, you can create opportunities for them to share their favorite quotes or reflections with the class, fostering a sense of community and providing an opportunity for learners to inspire each other. You can encourage them to categorize their quotes and reflections by themes, helping them see the bigger picture and make connections across different areas of learning. So now that we've discussed some of the benefits and theories behind commonplace books, let's explore how to help your students create their own. I recommend you start by trying it out yourself. Developing your own habit of keeping a commonplace book will help you guide your students more effectively. If you find it valuable, then consider introducing it to your classroom. Structure of a commonplace book. So a commonplace book can be divided into two parts. The first half will contain thematic sections where you categorize entries by topic. It should also include an index or list of the included themes. You'll want to number the pages of your notebook and create an index or table of contents at the front of the book. This index is the key to keeping things organized. It allows you to categorize by theme and quickly reference relevant sections. The second half is an open, unstructured space for capturing spontaneous thoughts, quotes, and ideas without needing to categorize or organize them immediately. So this setup balances a structured thematic organization with free-form creativity, making it easy to reference key topics while allowing flexibility for new insights. So to introduce the commonplace book, start simple. Begin with a basic structure that can build and grow over time. Useful sections might include vocabulary and themes from your course. As students grow more comfortable, shift from teacher-directed prompts to student-led entries. Begin with specific prompts like find a quote from today's lesson. Then gradually allow students to select quotes that resonate with them personally. As they gain confidence, encourage them to personalize their books by adding sections and subsections that reflect their interests and backgrounds. A commonplace book is a habit of mind, and so it needs to be practiced regularly to see progress over time. So you can structure the sections of a commonplace book around your course's big ideas. For example, in a unit on American literature, you could have pages with headings like justice, freedom, identity, and community. Within those pages, over the course of study, students can add lines or quotes from readings that relate to those big ideas, along with space for reflection. One of the things that I love about the Commonplace book is the thematic categories. It's incredibly flexible and it can be adapted for a variety of contexts and learners. So in a beginner course, those themes could be hobbies, family, and the home. And in a beginner course, it might be as simple as just vocabulary words, not full quotes. In a content-based instruction course with an environmental science focus, there might be themes like climate change, water, and pollution. In an English for Media Studies course, a Commonplace book might have themes like journalism, advertising, and representation. So the power of a Commonplace book lies in its simplicity and its flexibility. So based on your specific curriculum, your context, and your learners' needs, I would love to know what sections or themes you would want students to include in their Commonplace book.
Okay, so let's hear from you. What sections would you want your students to include in their Commonplace books? So let's see what responses. While we're waiting for responses, Jess, we have a few comments that I'd love to share with you.
Okay.
We heard from Shireen, who said, I love this activity. I can learn many quotes here. Thank you so much. And thanks for all for getting me new knowledge. It's very nice. Thank you,
That's so
Shireen,
nice.
for coming. Jessica said it's more wonderful to individuals, which means it's more motivating to learn and retain, and then it's likely to be used. So yes, if they, we could give students all the strategies in the world, but if they don't use them, they're not of much use. So that's important, Jessica. And then Cookie said, Commonplace books help you remember stuff, stay organized, grow personally, get creative, and remember things better. They're pretty awesome for learning and staying inspired. And then we had a response to the question, some responses to the question, what key sections or themes would you want students to include in their Commonplace book? We heard from Olga, who had a couple of questions for you, Jess. It said, do you think a Commonplace book has to be a paper notebook or can it be digital? I guess it'll be easier to organize thoughts thematically in an electronic document. What do you think?
Well, for sure, I think that you should do whatever works best for your type of brain. Like whatever works best for you is the thing that you should be doing. My preference is for a paper notebook because I love the feeling of paper on pen on paper. Like I feel like I retain more when I slow down and write with pen and paper, and then I can carry it with me. But I have a Notion account and I have a second Commonplace book that's digital. So if I'm out with just my phone, I can still capture notes. So it's your preference, whatever you do. There's lots of people using digital notebooks as Commonplace books these days.
Okay. Three more I do want to share with you quickly from Jorge. Jorge said future goals could be a theme or a key section. Zakira said vocabulary and grammar rules. And Mohammed said environmental issues could be a section or a theme. So those are some of the ideas from our participants. Back to you.
Those are great ideas. Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about assessment. Namely, you don't have to assess a Commonplace book. It doesn't need to be assessed. It doesn't need to be graded. It's a reflective tool. It's a personal workspace where students can explore their thoughts, connect ideas, and prepare for more formal assessments and performances. That said, you could consider creating a rubric to help structure holistic feedback. For example, you could co-create a set of evaluation criteria with your students, something that they could use to evaluate their own depth of thought or to provide peer feedback in a collaborative activity. At its core, a Commonplace book is a tool that helps students think. It occupies that liminal space between external content, what they're learning in class, and their internal processing of that information, which will eventually lead to their final performance, whether that's an essay, a presentation, or a discussion. Because of this unique role, a Commonplace book isn't just about what students produce, it's about how they engage with material and make it meaningful for themselves. So the following 4 activities are examples of how a commonplace book could be introduced to a language classroom to encourage multimodal reflection. As we've already discussed a little bit, a commonplace book can serve as a personal dictionary where students jot down their favorite words or expressions from lessons, reflecting on their significance. Over time, this could become a personalized dictionary that ties their studies to personal experience. So you could begin by encouraging your students to choose something that they're interested in, a hobby, a cause, an activity, a topic related to their work, a passion, and start a vocabulary list related to it. Along with the vocab word, they can add illustrations, examples, definitions, or translations in other languages that they know. Over time, they can continue adding to this list. So this is an example of a page from a language learner who is passionate about basketball. They have identified the basketball words that they want to remember in English, French, and Spanish, and they've drawn a simple illustration to help them remember. Now they're ready to play ball, pursue a passion, and make friends in English, French, and Spanish. So what do you think, Darlene? If you were going to make a personal dictionary page, what topic would you choose first?
I'm pretty sure I'd choose music because I love music. I love music as a teacher. I love music as a performer, and I love performing music with other people. So I would love to have the vocabulary that would allow me to do that, like tempo and rhythm and words like that. So I'm pretty sure music would be the thing for me. And I'm sure our participants have some responses as well. So let's see what you would say if your students could make their own personal language dictionary. What topics would they choose? So let's see. Well, while we are waiting for responses, we did have a comment from Chris H., who said, I'm not currently teaching, but am a language student, and am thinking that a book with sections on cultural insights and reflections would be fun, as I already keep a notebook of new vocabulary and grammar points, but never write about culture like this. So I think I know who Chris H. is. Hello, Chris. And I think that's a great idea to include a section on culture as well. Thanks for tuning in. And we also heard from Lourdes, who said travel. Roma said, I would go for food and ingredients. Junad said, students will have different choices. I personally would choose cricket. And then Ariba said, in the Commonplace book, they can note down the words which are confusing as well. So that could be a section, confusing words. So those are all, yes, all very good sections. Back to you, Jess.
Awesome. I love all of those ideas, especially a confusing words page. That's a great idea. Okay, let's see. Where were we? Okay, we're going to move on to our next strategy. The next practical strategy is a gallery walk. So a gallery walk is a dynamic, interactive activity where students move around the classroom or even outdoors to observe and engage with various stimuli. It could be images, objects, quotes. I like gallery walks because they get you moving and that can increase engagement. I know for me, I'm the type of learner who can't sit still. I love to get up and walk around and interact with people. But they can also serve as an excellent introduction to the reflective cycle as a learning process. A gallery walk allows students to slow down, observe, and connect emotionally or intellectually with different stimuli, setting the stage for deeper reflection. So to prepare for the gallery walk, choose a variety of stimuli related to the course content. This could be a mix of images, quotes, objects, or short excerpts of text. These can be placed around the room at different stations or displayed on walls. Ensure there's enough space for everyone to move around freely between the stimuli without feeling crowded. That will help maintain an environment that's like conducive to thoughtful observation. And then invite everyone to walk around the room at their own pace, observing. Encourage them to take their time at each station, allowing them to connect with an object or a quote that resonates with them personally. Provide them prompts to help guide their thinking as they observe. For example, ask them to consider, what emotions does this make you feel? How does this connect to something in your life or your studies? Students could choose one object or quote that particularly resonates with them, as this will be the focus of their reflective journal entry. So you demonstrate the process by selecting one piece of stimuli yourself and briefly sharing why it resonates with you. And that models the type of engagement and reflection that you're going to expect from your students. Walk them through the process of making a personal connection with the stimulus, explaining how this connection will form the basis of their reflective writing. After the gallery walk, gather students and ask them to write a short reflection on the stimulus that they selected. Provide a structure for their entry, such as the following types. Describe the selected object. What was it? What did it look like, say, or represent? Personal connection. Explain why they chose the piece, why this particular piece resonated with them, and how it relates to their own experiences, thoughts, or feelings. Then interpretation. What meaning or message do they take away from it? How does it relate to broader themes in the course or in their personal life? And finally, reflection. Consider what this exercise taught them about themselves, their learning process, or the subject matter. How might this insight be useful moving forward? Once the journal entries are complete, have the students pair up or form small groups to share their reflections. Encourage them to listen actively to their peers, asking questions or commenting on connections between reflections and their own. This step will not only reinforce the reflective process, but also foster a sense of community and shared learning in the classroom. Conclude this section by inviting a few volunteers to share their reflections with the whole class if they feel comfortable doing so. And this can help to highlight the diversity of responses and the richness of the reflective process. Reiterate that reflective writing is a powerful tool for deepening understanding and making personal connections with learning materials. Encourage students to continue practicing reflective writing in their Commonplace books throughout the course. So this approach ensures that students not only are introduced to reflective writing in an engaging way, but they're also given the opportunity to practice and discuss it, reinforcing the learning objectives of the activity. So to the audience, based on your specific curriculum, context, and learners' needs, I would love to hear how you would use or adapt the gallery walk for your classroom and learners.
Okay, so how would you use or adapt this idea of the gallery walk for your classroom and learners? See, well, right now we have some comments, a comment I'd like to share with you as our responses come in. Cookie said, commonplace books help you to remember things. And then Jessica said it's more meaningful to individuals. And then Narej has responded to our gallery walk question, said gallery walk with different stations showing video clips on environmental issues and their aftermath, followed by a group discussion and presentation. And then we heard from Fahid, who said the gallery walk can be used to encourage peer feedback and active engagement by helping students showcase and discuss their ideas or work with others. This reflective process promotes collaboration, deeper understanding, and diverse perspectives through interactive dialogue. And finally, we heard from Carlos, who said, I'd use objects and images. So those are some of our participants' ideas. Back to you, Jess.
Thank you so much. I love those ideas. Those are great. Let's move on to our next strategy, multilingual annotation. So at its heart, a commonplace book is a collection of quotes and ideas. And so it follows that annotation, knowing how to effectively mark passages while reading, is an important skill for keeping a commonplace book. Choosing quotes for a commonplace book, identifying those moments of resonance, it's a little like panning for gold. If you've ever watched someone looking for gold in a river, it's so interesting to watch. They go through buckets and buckets of mud, meaningless mud, to find one little speck of gold. And when they find that one little piece of gold, they put it into their collection of other little tiny pieces of gold until they finally have enough to put all those little pieces together and create something new. In a Commonplace book, these little pieces of gold are the quotes and words that resonate with you. You collect them as they come in, saving them for a future use. So to help students build their annotation skills, start by introducing a basic set of annotation symbols and codes that students can use, or encourage them to develop their own. Explain that using consistent symbols and codes can help you quickly identify key information, themes, and questions in the readings, making it easier to review and study for things like tests and exams or writing a paper. Choose a text relevant to your course theme and set up a moment for students to read for general understanding. Once you've established a general understanding of the text as a group, model the process of annotation for your students. Demonstrate how you would highlight key phrases, underline important concepts, and write notes in the margins. Explain your thought process aloud as you go, showing how you decide to annotate and why. Then give them an opportunity to read through again, this time annotating the text themselves. Encourage them to annotate texts in both the target language and their home language, or any other language they know. So like when they're writing notes in the margins, they can write it in English if they want, or they can write it in any other language they know, whatever works for them. Explain that this practice not only supports language development, but it also helps them draw on their full linguistic repertoire, their full toolbox of language to better understand and analyze academic texts. This can lead to more nuanced interpretations and stronger academic writing. After completing the annotation activity exercise, ask the students to choose one quote from the text that resonates with them. Remind them to cite their source, to remember where they found gold. Beneath the quote, they can add the title, the author, and page number. Finally, invite them to reflect on why they chose this quote. How does it connect to the theme that they identified? What personal experiences or thoughts does it bring to mind? How does it deepen their understanding of the course material? So I'm curious if our audience already teaches annotation skills, and if you do, what strategies have you found useful while teaching annotation? Please share your ideas in the chat. I can't wait to hear.
Okay, so what techniques do you use to teach annotation? Those are the responses we are looking for. What techniques do you use to teach annotation? Okay, so while those responses are coming in, we have an expansion on the definition of linguistic repertoire. Thank you, Doria. She put it in the chat. The overall set of language a person knows and can use in different situations, including their skills and knowledge of different languages and language varieties. So that idea of translanguaging that you mentioned earlier, Jess, is encapsulated in that idea. So we have some responses. What techniques do you use to teach annotation? And Zella said writing in the margins, and Fiona said color coding and providing a similar theme or idea beside every passage. So those are two responses that we received. And again, if you have other ideas, put it in the chat so that everyone can see them for later. Back to you, Jess.
Those are great. And thank you, Doria, for the reference to for explaining linguistic repertoire for me. So annotation, it's not just a tool for understanding texts in the moment, it's a foundational skill that supports long-term academic success. By developing strong annotation habits, students will be better equipped to engage with complex readings, to organize their thoughts, and produce high-quality academic work. So there's skills that are directly transferable to a wider range of academic tasks, from writing essays to preparing for exams to carrying out a research project. Furthermore, by teaching students to annotate thoughtfully and consistently, we're helping them build the critical thinking and analytical skills that are essential for success in higher education and beyond. Like a bullet journal, a commonplace book consists of collections, pages with thematic headings where students collect, organize, and reflect on significant quotes and insights related to that theme. By engaging with major themes and underlying philosophies of the course, commonplace books help learners think deeply, make meaningful connections, and develop a richer understanding of the material. In the end, this not only reinforces learning, but also fosters critical thinking and personal growth. So to help students work through this process, you can break it down into a few simple steps. Select a theme that's relevant to your course and have the students create a new thematic section for it in the first half of their commonplace book. Invite students to review the quotes in the open notes section in the second part of their commonplace book related to that theme. Students can then select relevant quotes to add to the new section, along with additional reflections, connections, illustrations, etc., to connect ideas. In pairs or small groups, they can share their new section and describe their thought process. So let's take a little bit closer look at this. We begin with an invitation to explore the open notes collection, searching for quotes that fit a certain theme. For example, if you were teaching a course on American literature, one of your categories might be freedom, a common theme in American writing. Students review the quotes that they've collected and select those that connect to the concept of freedom. So let's zoom in on 2 pages. We can see that the owner of this commonplace book has quotes from Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte and Ain't I a Woman by Sojourner Truth. Darlene, from all of these quotes, are there any that resonate with you when you think of freedom?
Okay, so I'm looking over at the Jane Eyre page, and it says, I am no bird and no net ensnares me. I am a free human with an independent will. So, of course, that catches my attention as a woman thinking about those times and what she probably wasn't feeling very independent in the limitations that were placed on women. But of course, when I see Sojourner Truth's quote, Ain't I a Woman, being familiar with that whole speech and how it was important for her to assert her humanity, both as a woman and as a Black person in a society that did not honor her humanity in either of those cases. So both of those would resonate with me.
Great choices. Both of these quotes speak about freedom, but from very different personal experiences. The quote from Jane Eyre emphasizes personal autonomy and inner strength, that the idea that freedom requires the power to shape one's own destiny. And Sojourner Truth's quote calls out the injustices women of color face, and she also highlights how intersectionality affects the experience of freedom. She reminds us that the struggle for equality has to consider all dimensions of identity, gender, race, class, and beyond. And when she asks, Ain't I a woman? She's saying that freedom can't be singular or partial. It needs to be inclusive for everyone. So together, these 2 quotes help us consider freedom as both a personal journey and a collective responsibility. So to start putting these ideas together, we can create a spread, 2 blank pages side by side with the heading freedom. As students review and select quotes relating to the concept of freedom, they can transcribe them again, this time onto the new spread. And as they do this, they can reference the reflections that they wrote when they first found the quote and copied it into their open notes section. They can think about how this connects to the theme of the page. As they continue to transcribe, they can add illustrations or draw lines to link ideas and add new reflections. In doing this, they'll begin to form or refine their thoughts on that greater course theme, making it easier to find their own voice as it relates to the content. So you can see here on the spread, we've got the quotes from Charlotte Bronte and Sojourner Truth circled in red. And we can also see some personal reflections that are circled in yellow dashed lines on the slide. And you can also see there's a drawing of a caged bird singing, highlighted by a circle of blue dots on the slide. And that's connected to an example of translanguaging. The owner of this book has written to have your own voice in Spanish, French, and Urdu. So on this page, we can see thinking in action. The learner is synthesizing their existing knowledge. They're pulling together diverse ideas and creating their own personal understanding of the concept of freedom. After finishing an activity like this, they may be ready to start working on a performance piece, the outline for an essay, a presentation, or some other way of demonstrating their personal understanding. So the Commonplace book, it's a traditional tool with enduring value that's well suited for the digital age. Whether you choose to implement it through simple paper and pencil or explore digital platforms, the Commonplace book offers a flexible, sustainable way to engage students in deep reflective learning. In a world where digital content shapes our interactions, the skills that students develop through Commonplace books, critical thinking, synthesis, and personal expression, the ability to think through why a social media post resonates with you, to identify which emotions it evokes, and to decide whether something is worth liking, whether you will leave a comment, whether to share it or create something new with it, and if you do, knowing how to give credit to the original creator. These digital interactions are modern day forms of annotation and reflection, which makes the Commonplace book a valuable tool for honing these skills. They're useful skills not just to succeed academically, but to be an engaged global citizen in the 21st century. By integrating Commonplace books into your teaching, you're empowering your students to create their own personalized knowledge base, a repository of ideas that will serve them well throughout their educational journey and beyond. It's not just a tool for learning, it's a strategy for cultivating thoughtful, engaged, and reflective learners ready to thrive in the 21st century. As you leave the session, I hope you feel inspired to explore the Commonplace book and consider incorporating it into your teaching practice. Whether you're working with digital tools or traditional notebooks, it's a strategy that has the potential to ignite your students' passion for learning, to help them make meaningful connections and support their journey toward academic and personal growth. Thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to hearing how you incorporate these ideas in your classrooms and the impact that they have on your students' learning journeys.
And thank you, Jess, for sharing with us how to turn annotation and note-taking into a powerful journal for student reflection.